Assalamu alaikum and welcome to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Hannah. I am a trauma and healing coach for Muslim women. I help Muslim women heal from complex trauma and build a beautiful life ahead of them. If that's something you're interested in, I have the links to my group coaching program and one-on-one coaching in my description. I'm actually accepting applicants for the next cohort, which happens after Ramadan, one of the best cohorts just because of the blessing of Ramadan being carried on. So do look into that. In this video, we are going to be talking about 3 more narcissists. And specifically, we're going to talk about the most dangerous narcissist and a narcissist that many people don't actually realize is extremely damaging. If you haven't watched the first video, you're going to go back to that video first and then come back to this one. And of course, watch till the end, inshallah, to get the most value. So in the first video, I'll briefly cover what we went through. We talked about the grandiose narcissist, the communal narcissist, and the neglectful narcissist. Today, we are going to be talking about 3 more narcissists. And I'll start off with a narcissist that many people struggle to recognize. But it's unfortunately one that I see a lot in the Muslim community, and more specifically one that I see a lot of mothers take on. And this is the covert narcissist. Now, the covert narcissist is one type of narcissist that is extremely difficult to identify. And part of the reason is that the covert narcissist weaponizes guilt. And they do this by presenting as a very vulnerable and victimized person. And so the covert narcissist, right, at the core, what is narcissism? Narcissism is this hyper focus on oneself at the expense of empathy and care and the consequences that the narcissist's actions has on another person. That's what narcissism is. The covert narcissist takes on this vulnerable victim mentality. And in their mind, they are the one who is suffering. And nobody else's suffering matches up to their suffering. And because nobody else's suffering matches up to their suffering, no one else has the right to complain about their suffering. No one has a right to see anyone else's suffering besides the narcissist. No one can ask that narcissist to apologize or to change their ways or to not cause harm. Because why would you ask a victim who's so vulnerable and who's suffering so much to change? The other thing that makes this type of narcissist very difficult to deal with, especially if this is a parent, and oftentimes, like I mentioned, this tends to be a more gendered type of narcissist. It is most often seen in mothers. What makes it so hard is because they weaponize guilt. If you grew up with I'll use mother in this instance, a mother like that, it almost feels shameful, like you're doing something, from our perspective, haram, to brings up the harm that is being caused by this covert narcissism. And you learn very quickly to shut down your own emotional reactions, shut down your own feelings, to realize you're not going to be validated. So it's always going to be oppression Olympics in your conversations. And a lot of resentment gets built up. But this very confusing mix of guilt and shame, plus the anger and the resentment, can cause a significant weight and turmoil mentally for a child of a covert narcissist. What also makes this very complicated is that often the covert narcissist has a lot of people who back them up because they play the victim and the vulnerable part so well. It is not uncommon that other people will come to a person who's trying to, essentially get their right, take their haq from a covert narcissist, and say, why would you do that? Why would you disturb this person? Why would you make them angry? Why don't you see how much they're already suffering? Don't you see how much they're hurting? It is extremely delicate and complicated. This is especially true in communal cultures where there's a significant hierarchy, where parents are at the top, and no matter what parents do, they're always right, and children are at the bottom. Now, where do we come in when it comes to an Islamic perspective, right? Because this can be complicated, especially once again, if this is, the situation is that your parent is a covert narcissist. Well, Islam doesn't discriminate when it comes to rights being taken away. What do I mean by that? Whether a person is suffering or not does not give them the right to cause you harm. Physical harm, psychological harm, spiritual harm does not give them the right. The way the power hierarchy is set up in Islam is that each human being is given a set of particular rights. And then between certain relationships exist different rights, right? We often hear the husband has rights to the wife has rights to the husband, a parent has rights to a child, as does a child have rights to their parents. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created these really, particular power structures so that we are always able to align with them, because that is the highest ideal, and that's what allows for the most cohesiveness and peace to occur. If those rights are not being given, you as a person who is not being given the right is allowed to communicate that and allowed to take action on that. And so that is a really important piece to mention, because when it comes to healing from a covert narcissist, it starts with validating yourself and recognizing, like, yeah, they might have gone through some stuff. They might have actually gone through really, really horrible trauma themselves. But it's not your fault that they didn't heal from that trauma. Because here's the thing, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that we're all going to be tested, and we are all going to be tested in the capacity of what we can handle. So what this person is tested with, even if to you objectively it looks worse, we understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested based on that person's capacity. That does not give them the right to then take away or step on your rights or cause harm to you. And so they might have gone through hardship, and you can empathize with that. In the previous video, I talked about the importance of empathy and healing. But at the same time, that doesn't take away from the fact that you also have your struggle and have your challenges that you're now going to have to live with and going to have to heal. And you have to validate that as well, because otherwise the anger, resentment, shame, and guilt is going to eat up at you. That is the covert narcissist. Next, we're going to talk about the most obvious narcissist, the one that causes oftentimes some of the most damage. They can be the most alarming and scary one to deal with, and that is the malignant narcissist. The name in and of itself is a really good descriptor. Malignant narcissists are truly an embodiment of shaitani like character, devilish character. And because of that, they have no concern for the harm that they cause other people. They are the true definition of the narcissist. They are the true definition of the narcissist. The malignant narcissist is very menacing, very, it's scary to be around them. They take pleasure from the harm that they cause other people. They are not going to apologize. They have no concern for the consequences to their actions and the long-term harm that they cause. They can be liars. They will do whatever they can to get out of things, out of accountability. They are extremely manipulative. They use different forms of abuse very knowingly. They are the ones that are most likely to use physical abuse, to use emotional and psychological abuse. They are obsessed with control and power. If you step out of line, you are going to be punished. And the trauma that this type of narcissist causes is oftentimes, from my experience working with clients, some of the most deep-rooted and difficult to heal from. It's not impossible to heal from, but because by necessity, the malignant narcissist has to damage any sense of safety that you have. When that safety gets destroyed, the nervous system just goes into overdrive. And because of that, what ends up happening is that the person finds themselves in constant nervous system dysfunction and regular trauma responses that can be very difficult to come out of, because the foundational safety that they have to come back into is gone. And so when we're doing work on healing trauma for a person like this who had a parent who was a malignant narcissist, is we really have to rebuild that safety first in the nervous system and then move forward in trying to address the actual roots of the trauma and different traumatic memories and experiences. The malignant narcissist is one that can be very confusing, because sometimes you can get glimpses into this better part of them. People who are married to malignant narcissists, because that safety is so is pulled away so quickly, they're very easily conditioned to identify those small glimpses of possible safety, possible change, and then they latch onto that. And this is actually classical conditioning. It conditions their brain into staying in the abusive situation. This is why we have to have tremendous empathy for people who are married to a malignant narcissist and stayed in a relationship that was harmful and even sometimes physically violent for longer than what we would have deemed appropriate. You don't know until you're there. You don't know what that suffering is like. You don't understand what a person psychologically has to do to be able to cope with that. Healing from a malignant narcissist, like I mentioned earlier, is first and foremost getting away from them. This is one of the situations where if you speak to a scholar, you will get obviously speak to a scholar. I'm not making a fatwa here. Let me preface that. I don't want to take I don't want people to take what I'm saying as a fatwa. But oftentimes I have heard scholars give permission for a full cutoff from a malignant narcissist parent. And that is something to make the decision with, obviously, that scholarly education. I'm not a scholar. You're going to hear me say this a lot because obviously I take my deen very seriously and I don't want to be misleading people. But because of the extent of harm and oppression that this type of narcissist causes and the emotional, physical, and mental harm that comes from it, this distance is often an important piece for a lot of people's healing. The other piece is building that sense of safety. Children of malignant narcissists have a much higher likelihood of falling into a relationship, a marriage, with someone, Muslim children, with someone who's also malignant narcissist or has malignant narcissistic tendencies. That is very scary, and so healing is a very extensive process for the child of a malignant narcissist, because you have to rebuild that safety. There's a broken sense of self and self-esteem and self-confidence that has to be rebuilt. The nervous system is often very overactive, so that we have to teach the nervous system what is actually truly unsafe and what is not, and that is an extensive process. So healing from a malignant narcissist is, as you are seeing, a complex situation, but obviously with the right practitioner and someone who can support you in that, inshallah, I really pray that that is something that you're able to do. I've seen many women heal from that. The final narcissist that I want to talk about is the self-righteous narcissist. And oh my God, if there's one of the 6 types of narcissists that really gets under my skin, it is the self-righteous narcissist. And God, how much some of our cultures normalize this type of narcissism. The self-righteous narcissist is very critical. They are it's their way or the highway. They know everything. They're better at everything. It's always a nose pointed up at everyone else. They are extremely judgmental. They lack a tremendous amount of empathy, which obviously is a trait of narcissism, but to a different level. They find themselves like things are based on rules and beliefs that they hold, and if someone else doesn't hold by those same beliefs or rules or does something in a different way, then that person is stupid and that person doesn't know what they're doing and they don't wish well for you. It is exhausting dealing with this type of narcissist, because the critical nature of this type of narcissist eats away at your self-esteem, and it is really difficult to manage that if you don't have a strong sense of self. The self-righteous narcissist oftentimes doesn't even realize the level of shame that they hold. And what do I mean by that? Oftentimes a self-righteousness, this like amazement by how well you have it together, and this criticalness about how everyone else doesn't have it together, come from this place of fear of, if you fall off or you did something wrong, you're going to end up in a really bad place. And so they hold that self-righteousness as a coping mechanism to not have to deal with that shame. Right? It's easier to think you're doing everything right than to think that there's something wrong with you that you need to fix. Dealing with a self-righteous narcissist and healing from that looks like a lot of boundaries. Now, let me start off, let me say that dealing with any type of narcissist, you have to set boundaries, and those boundaries look different. And there are different types of boundaries. I actually have an entire session in my trauma group coaching program dedicated to just boundaries because of how complex the topic is. Plus, when you bring in the Islamic side of it, the things that we have to know and how we manage them. But dealing with a self-righteous narcissist means boundaries around their level of criticalness or how critical they are to you. This doesn't mean that you can't take healthy criticism if someone gives you criticism, right? When it comes to your family, if someone is giving you healthy criticism, doesn't automatically mean that they're a self-righteous narcissist, right? It might be that they're concerned for you. If it's coming from a religious place, you have fallen into sin, or they worry about that, it might be coming from a good place. This is specifically when it comes to someone who's regularly judgmental, critical, and putting you down. And so setting boundaries around the level of criticism, knowing when to walk away. If a conversation is shifting to where it's critical and it's doing you mental and emotional harm instead of building you up like healthy criticism does, then those boundaries are really, really important. There's a lot more that I can say about this, but I'm going to stop it here, inshallah. I hope that you liked this video plus the other video before it. And if you did, then please like and subscribe to learn more about healing trauma. Of course, to the ladies who are watching this, if you are ready to take that step to heal from trauma and go through my system of healing trauma at the level of the body, mind, and soul, then you can go to the link in the description to learn more about my trauma group coaching program and book a free discovery call where you can learn about the program and whether it's a good fit for you. All right, assalamu alaikum.